Assalamualaikum. Jazakallah khair, everyone, for joining. Very happy to have you all here for a new class that we're beginning with the Beacon Foundation. For those of you that are familiar with the Beacon Foundation, and those of you that are hearing for the first time, we're a nonprofit organization based out of the Detroit area, trying to bring some of our scholars here on a regular basis, teaching our tradition and our faith and applying it to our daily lives. Alhamdulillah, we're very honored today to begin the first class and with our guest, Imam Zaid Shakir from the Zaytuna College. He's made his way out here just for this inaugural class. And of course, we have Imam Dawood who will be teaching for the semester, for the course. And the plan for the course is to travel. So we wanted to have our inaugural class here at Masjid Wali Muhammad. We thought it was fitting with some of the brothers that were showing interest in the class. And many of the Beacon Foundation members have requested that we bring classes back to Masjid Wali Muhammad. So we're very honored to be here amongst you all. Imam Dawood and Imam Zaid both need no introduction, but they are my elders. Obviously, Imam Dawood is the Executive Director of CARE. And at the same time, the book that we'll be using for the course Towards Sacred Activism is a book that Imam Dawood has authored and published, and it's been out for a while now, and many of us have had an opportunity to read parts of it. And we've made a request from Imam Dawood specifically. It's one thing to read the book, it's another thing to bring the book alive. Alhamdulillah. And so we had requested from Imam Dawood to teach the course in that way. And this is a part one. This semester we wanted to go through the book and kind of deal with the content of the book as it's there. And the hope is that in the next semester, the course that will be taught, we'll dive in a little bit more on the more spiritual aspects with our scholar, Sheikh Waleed. And as well, we have Imam Zaid here. He did write the foreword to the book, so for those of you that had time to read the book ahead of time, Imam Zaid did publish his writing prior to the book itself. So we have books for sale downstairs. If you haven't already registered, if you registered, the book is included in the registration fee. And one of the things, obviously it's hard sometimes on a Wednesday night for people to get out. And the hope is that as long as you've registered for the course, we'll be sharing a live stream for the course as well. Now, it won't be on Facebook. It will be on YouTube, and we'll be doing it through a live stream on YouTube. I just want to keep the content somewhat sacred as well, with the students that are here, as well as for those people that will be viewing online. So there's a link online for those of you that haven't had an opportunity to register, and as well for those of you here, Sister Sadia is downstairs registering. So enough from me. I'm going to hand the mic over to Imam Dawood, and then we'll begin, inshallah.
Brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam tasliman kathiran da'iman abada. Well, thank you all for coming this evening. We have our distinguished shuyukh and imams who are in the audience, as well as honorable brothers and sisters in Islam. What I'm going to do is basically outline for you what's going to be going over for the next 7 classes with Allah's permission, and then I will turn the microphone over to our esteemed, I won't say guest, but our esteemed teacher, Imam Zaid Shakir, may Allah preserve him. But before that, I think that there's 2 other things I want to mention. The first is I think that it's very fitting that this class Towards Sacred Activism is starting here in number 1. And by number 1, I mean that this was the building on which the community of the first temple of the Nation of Islam was started. And this was the first mosque that was renamed by Imam Mufti Muhammad rahmatullah alayhi. This room where we're sitting in right now is the first place that our beloved, the Imam Hussein of America, Minister Malcolm X, Imam Malcolm X, rahmatullah alayhi, this is the first building that he spoke in, and right in this very sanctuary area, this musalla is the first place where he spoke. So I think that it is very fitting that when we're talking about towards sacred activism that we started here in Masjid Wai Muhammad in the 313 area code. And the 313 is reported that Allah sent 124,000 prophets to humankind, and 313 of those were messengers. And it is also reported in some narrations, not authentic hadith, that in the army of Dawood alayhi salam, when he went and slayed Jalut, there were 313 soldiers in the army of Dawood alayhi salam. And we know that there was 313, there was 313 Sahaba at the Ghazwa Badr. So we know that 313 is the place to be. Alhamdulillah. The second thing is I'd like for us to recite Surah Al-Fatiha for the blessed soul of Imam Rashidin, who's a former resident imam of this masjid. We buried him today. And when I moved to Detroit in 1998, this was the first masjid I came to, Salat al-Jama'ah. He's actually the first imam that I prayed behind here in the 313. So with that, we'd like to say this with the intention of giving the reward to Imam Rashidin. Let's recite Al-Fatiha together. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Alhamdulillah. So for the next, as Brother Irfan said, we're going to be moving these classes around to some different locations. I believe we're coming back here for another class, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And the subsequent classes, we will be using PowerPoint presentations along with the classes, and those will be projected. So what we are going to be going over more in depth, and also having discussion around participation from students and questions, and have a dialogue. We will be going over the chapters of the book in sequence. So this is the introductory class. Afterwards, we will be going over what is justice. So that is the first chapter, because we're talking about justice. Well, we need to first go into some definitions and, inshallah, get on the same page on what is both a lughawi or linguistic definition of justice, and go through some operational understandings or applications of what the term justice is within the Islamic tradition. The second is the obligation for the Muslim community to be involved in what is termed social justice, although this is a new term. But what is the obligation in us seeking to promote that in the American society to bring about better life for all the inhabitants here in these United States of America? And what we could say is classically defined as al-amru bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar, which falls underneath that of enjoining good and forbidding that which is evil, meaning that which God has mandated upon us, as well as that which is recommended, and enjoining that, as well as trying to prevent and place barriers amongst those things that are bring about antisocial behaviors and morality within society. Not only those things that God and His Messenger alayhi salam have prohibited, but also those things that are displeasing, and also we could say may not be palatable for the space and time that we live in here in these United States of America. So we will go into that further. Then the next will be the prerequisites for enjoying the good and forbidding the evil. So first we're talking about the obligation, as well as the consequences for foregoing this obligation, and then what are the prerequisites for enjoying good and forbidding the evil. Then we will then go over what is some general comportment etiquettes, what we normally use the term adab, for enjoining the good and forbidding the evil as it relates to this sort of activism. Then the next week we'll go over the issue of entering coalitions for social justice, and specifically trying to present a framework of what is the difference between allies and coalition partners, or what is the difference between an alliance or allyship and being in coalition. There's some of these terms, especially in social justice circles. Allyship is a misused and overused term in social justice circles that Muslims are in. So we want to clarify that. Then the chapter which basically takes what comes before, and we could say is somewhat like how to apply it, or a case study is not perhaps the right word, but how to apply that which came before will be elaborated on, and the example that will be used is wading through contentions of LGBTQ engagement. Like, what is a proposed middle ground for dealing with this issue of not going too far to the right, no too far to the left, in dealing with the issue of LGBTQ engagement, or for that matter, those people who identify as inside these collection of alphabets that seem to be growing every week. I don't even know. There's an I and a plus and N. And may Allah help us. Then the next chapter will be spiritual self-care, right? So people talk a lot about self-care in the context of, well, you have to have the proper amount of sleep, eat properly. You know, besides that, having some leisure time. People talk about this within the realm of self-care. But what about spiritual self-care that will help keep us balanced, or bring us into balance, and help sustain us without going into fits or being handcuffed by anxiety, right? Or going to the levels of despair. So hopefully we'll touch on that, and then we will wrap it up in the final class, where we will come back full circle with a conclusion. Okay, so that is basically what we will be going over for the next 7 courses, with Allah's permission. And with that, we are so grateful to have our beloved teacher here, Imam Zaid, with us, and he will take it from here and enlighten us. Inshallah, we will have, after that class ending, I believe we'll have some time for some Q&A briefly, and then Salatul Isha and some snacks. So thank you all for coming, and may Allah bless you and protect your families, and help the Muslims all throughout the world, from the D to Kashmir, Yemen, and everywhere. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
It's a great honor and pleasure to be here at this very historic location, the site of Temple No. 1, where many good things began, and where many legendary figures once tread. Alhamdulillah, and to just be able to look at the various placards and paper articles and writings and pictures futures should be reminded of the great, great legacy that we should see ourselves as being an extension of. And may Allah, all the people involved in the movement that emanated from this place, may Allah overlook any shortcomings that they have had, may Allah multiply their good deeds, and may Allah join us all together in paradise, the righteous. So this sacred activism, the topic, first of all, I wrote the introduction based on one chapter. At that time, the entire book was unhinged. So my introduction is by no way a complete overview of the entire book. I focused on certain themes, if you will, related to the topic itself. One theme was just the fact that this whole sort of dichotomy that presents deen and religious scholarship on the one hand, the scholars, and worldly activism on the other hand, is one that doesn't exist in Islam. This is a product of the modern and now postmodern West that has created these dichotomies. Scholar, activism, sacred, profane, etc. This doesn't exist in Islam. So every Muslim, by definition, is an activist in the sense that we have to act on what we know. There's hadith, some say it's saying of a companion, ليس الدين بالتمني ولكن ما وقر في القلب وصدقه العمل. That faith, or you can even say the religion itself, is not a fancy, it's not something you wish for. It's not something you imagine. Rather, it's what takes root in the heart and is testified to by action. ولكن ما وقر في القلب وصدقه العمل. And so for us, the action is the living testimony of the faith. And so faith, which is defined by religion, cannot be separated from action. And the activist, literally we would say the amil. So to act, amila, he acted. Amilat, she acted, she did something. The amil is the description of the Muslim who practices his or her religion. It's the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam describing the end of time. في آخر الزمان أيام تسمى أيام الصبر. At the end of time, there will be days called days of patience. So we're living in those days. You have to be very patient to maintain your religion. You have to be very patient to maintain your sanity, because the nonsense comes at us like in tidal waves, like a tsunami compounded by an avalanche and complicated by a flood.
Right.
It's a ball of confusion. That's what the world is today. Hey. The temptation started here too. More time. So, ball of confusion. You have to be patient. So it says, في آخر الزمان أيام تسمى أيام الصبر. And then he says, فالقابض على دينه كالقابض على الجمر. And one holding on to their religion during those days will be like one holding on to a burning ember. It's like when you had your barbecue this summer in your backyard. You imagine scooping out one of those red hot. So try to hold on. You're not going to just scoop. MashaAllah. And someone's burning some meat. Oh! It's hard to hold on to that. And here's the point. وَالْأَجْرُ الْعَامِلِ فِيهَا. So the reward of one who continues to act, who continues to practice. وَالْأَجْرُ أجر العامل فيها كأجر 50 رجلا. It's like the reward of 50 men. منا أو منهم يا رسول الله. 50 of them or 50 of us, O Messenger of Allah. منكم. The reward of 50 companions. But who does that reward accrue to? The one who continues to act. وَالْأَجْرُ الْعَامِلِ فِيهَا. And so we all have to be activists in that sense, that we implement and put into practice what we know. One of our great scholars in a didactic poem, a teaching poem, he mentioned وَالْعَالِمُ بِعِلْمِهِ لَمْ يَعْمَلًا مُعَذَّبٌ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ عابث الوثن. والعالم بعلمه لم يعملا معذب من قبل عابث الوثن. عابث الوثن. The one who, the scholar, the one who knows something and doesn't act on it, activist, will be punished before the worshippers of idols. The scholar who doesn't act on his or her knowledge will be punished before the worshippers of idols. So we're all activists, or should be in that sense. Our Prophet ﷺ, he was the prophet, the last prophet since to humanity ﷺ. So he was a teacher. He was a spiritual guide. He was a spiritual exemplar. But he was also one who worked to change the conditions in his society. So he was an activist, if you will. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is one package. There was no dichotomy. And so this, I mentioned in the introduction, the unity of God, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the source of a unified creation. Not to say creation is an extension of God, but that the decree of God, the knowledge of God, the decree of God, the power of God, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, unifies this creation. The command of Allah unifies this creation and permeates throughout this creation. And that unity provides a logic, it provides a sense of coherence that is lacking in those things that emanate from the world. So if Tawheed, the oneness of God, is the central unifying force of creation, Takfir, the opposite of Tawheed, to make one, Wa'id, Wahada, Yuwahidu, Tawheed, to make one, is multiplicity. Kathara, Yukathiru, Takfir. As Imam Dawud mentioned, it started LGB. That was it. Lesbian, gay, bisexual. T, Q, I, N, plus, Takfir. Because the unifying logic, once you take the creator out, the unifying logic is lacking. And inevitably you will get Takfir. And it doesn't just happen in those realms of secular endeavor. It happens amongst religion, amongst Muslims. Whenever the focus becomes on what we as humans can produce, you'll get that same multiplicity. And so the greatest example of that is the Khawarij. The Khawarij are known to constantly split up into splinter groups and splinter groups and splinter groups because they're pursuing an agenda that's divorced from the unifying logic of Tawheed. Because why? They reserve unto themselves the right to declare who is or who is not a Muslim. And in making that designation, they remove themselves from the unifying logic of those realms reserved specifically for our Creator. And you get this multiplicity. In any case, I think it's very important to understand when we talk about takfir and we talk about things emanating from the minds of people or their passions and emotions, and that being a source of multiplicity. Why? Because all of our passions and all of our minds, when we lack the unifying force of scripture and prophethood, they're all different. So without that unifying element, how can we not come up with all these different conceptualizations of what's good, what's moral, what's proper, what's beneficial? There's no regulator, no dhabit to regulate that, no unifying regulator to keep us unified around a central theme. That central theme being La ilaha illallah. And so this comes to foundational issues. So why do we talk about, we say, the idea of the dichotomy between scholar activism that does not exist in our religion? How does it come about? It comes about because the epistemology, the way we understand knowledge and the sources of knowledge differs. For believers, the sources of knowledge include scripture, include revelation. For the secularist, the sources of knowledge do not include revelation. And so what's lawful or unlawful is not defined by revelation. The relationship between the scholar and activist is not defined by revelation. And so again, at the very foundation, at the epistemic level, the unifying logic is absent. It doesn't exist. So, when we understand that, we look at the world in entirely different ways. One way that we look at the world, the believer understands that nothing occurs outside of the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And anything that we might initiate will only succeed if it's consistent with the will of Allah. وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ. And whatever you desire will only bear any fruit if it's consistent with that which is desired by the Lord of all the worlds. When we understand that, the tension and the anger that can overwhelm someone who doesn't understand that, there's no foundation for it. We can relax. We work hard. We'll get to that. We work hard, but we understand everything occurring is a manifestation of the divine will in the world, including our actions. Our actions ultimately, as you said, is immediate and ultimate causation. If I have the dominoes lined up, not to gamble, but just to do the cascading thing, and I tip down my click domino number one, and it fell like that. I intend to knock that over. Felt good though. So I click, and then it clicks, and then domino number 10 falls. What is the immediate cause of domino number 10 falling? The immediate cause. Domino number 9 hitting it. What is the ultimate cause? Me knocking over the first one. Because if I never did that, domino number 9 would not have hit domino number 10.
I love that.
Alhamdulillah. All praises to Allah. So, everything is a manifestation, ultimately, of the divine will unfolding in the world. And this is, understanding that is one of the things that gives a sense of overwhelm activists. Because you know you're not initiating this. You're part of a line of causation. But ultimately, you're not initiating. Yes, immediately we do. That's what mentioned the dominoes. I thought of this, I got involved, I signed up, I went to the rally. But you understand, ultimately, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who's acting. And we just immerse ourselves in that reality. So in the Weird of Imam Nawawi, there's a phrase, I've mentioned this before, some of you might have heard it. He says, Bismillah, Ubillah, Minallah, Alallah, wa Fillah, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. With the name of Allah and with Allah, and from Allah and to Allah, relying upon Allah, and enveloped by Allah's mercy, grace, and will, there is no strength or power except Allah. And that is one of the great foundations of sacred activism. Because we know I'm acting, but I'm acting within a realm defined by the Lord of all the worlds. And so the sacred is never divorced from my activism. The sacred is never divorced from my activism. Second thing, in terms of giving a sense of the sacred to our activism, a legal point that Imam Dawood points out in the book, is that every action we undertake must be informed by the divine law. So whenever we do anything, whether it's in the realm of action, social, society, religion, family, whatever it is, we should endeavor to know the ruling for that thing. In terms of is it obligatory, wajib, for me to do this? Is it forbidden, haram, for me to do this? Is it encouraged, mustahab, for me to do this? Is it disliked or hated for me to do this? Makruh. Is it permissible for me to do this? Sort of a neutral thing, there's no reward, no punishment. We should know the ruling of everything we do. And then whatever cause we choose to involve ourselves in, knowing that our involvement is something sanctioned by the divine law, again, gives us a sense of the sacred, that I'm not randomly choosing what I'll become involved in. That I'm choosing those things which I understand either through direct knowledge or through consultation. So maybe we don't know the ruling. إن الحلال بين وإن الحرام بين وبينهما أمور مشتبهات لا يعلمهن كثير من الناس. So there are some things most people don't know their ruling. So we consult scholars. So they say, there's a saying, ما خاب من استشار. The one who consults qualified people will never be disappointed. So if we don't know, we should ask. So I gave an example in the introduction. So let's say there's an effort to ban pornography. You should be clapping. As a Muslim, we can't say, oh, well, that will violate the First Amendment, freedom of speech. So we have to go to the rally to protect the right of the pornography people. That's haram. Why? Because pornography is haram. And so I can't go to a rally to encourage and foster the perpetuation, institutionalizing of the haram. Because I checked before. What is the ruling for pornography? Haram. First Amendment doesn't matter. Like some people, they say, we have to be for A, B, C, or D. Why? Because it's constitutional. You know what? Drinking is constitutional. So we're going to drink? It's constitutional. It's still haram. Drinking is haram. Drinking is harmful. It's filthy. Bad breath, vomit, all over yourself. This is Allah's forbidding the khaba'ith, filthy things. Anal sex is filthy. It is forbidden. So we can't rally for people's right to engage in anal sex. It's haram. It's filthy. It fosters diseases. And so once we know it's haram, that's it. There is no activism around that issue. There's no activism around pornography. If there was prohibition reinstated, there's no activism to repeal prohibition. Because they're haram. And as a believer, we want to know the ruling. And knowing the ruling tells us, is this a proper realm for me to be active in? And respecting that conveys a sense of the sacred to our activities. So this is the second issue. So first, the understanding Tawheed and understanding that Allah Ta'ala controls the affair of the universe and all things. So in the course of that, I mentioned a verse in the Quran because it really shows, number one, the primacy of how religion, if you will, and activism, if you will, are rendered into a single whole. And then what Imam Dawood mentioned, the last section of the book, taking care of ourselves spiritually. These are all important. So there's one verse in Quran, in Surah Baqarah, number 177. So Allah Ta'ala mentions, Allahumma salli Rasulillah. ليس البر أن تولوا وجوهكم قبل المشرق والمغرب ولكن البر من آمن بالله واليوم الآخر والملائكة والكتاب والنبيين وآتى المال على حبه ذوي القربى واليتامى والمساكين وابن السبيل والسائلين وفي الرقاب وأقام الصلاة وآتى الزكاة والموفون بعهدهم إذا عاهدوا والصابرين في البأساء والضراء وحين البأس أولئك الذين صدقوا وأولئك هم المفلحون هم المتقون. So it's not righteousness to turn your faces to the direction of the east and west of prayer. In other words, one thing right doesn't make you a righteous person. Some people, I got the Qibla right. All you people playing to the north, east, or wrong. And here my Jama'ah playing to the southeast or right. I got the Qibla right, I'm right. I got Eid right. All y'all doing Eid on the wrong day. I'm doing it on the right day. I'm in like Flynn. لا ليس البر أن تولوا وجوهكم قبل المشرق والمغرب. It's not. You know, I got the beard the right length. I'm working on it. I'm trying to get some of us are follically challenged. Anyway, but so I got the beard right. I got the pants length right. No, listen, birra. Not one thing. وَلَكِنَّ الْبِرَّ. Righteousness is a whole bunch of things. So, وَلَكِنَّ الْبِرَّ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ is faith. That's the foundation. And so, he's going to mention realms, Allah Ta'ala rather, is going to mention realms of social action. But if they're not built on faith, they're meaningless. Like the Christians used to say, how many of y'all converted to Islam? How many of this rings a bell? Christians used to say, deeds without faith are rootless, and faith without deeds is fruitless. Remember that? Deeds without faith are rootless, and faith without deeds are fruitless. So if those deeds aren't rooted in the ground of faith, then they're rootless. They have no roots. And so the root of faith, so the first thing, وَلَكِنَّ الْبِرَّ, rather righteousness, مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ, is one believing in Allah and the angels and the scriptures and the prophets. and the last day, Allah, the last day, and the angels and the scriptures and the prophets. That's the foundation. So we call that religious. Right? Call that religious. Religion. وآتى المال على حبه ذوي القربى واليتامى والمساكين وابن السبيل والسائلين في الرقاب, and they spend their wealth for what? وآتى المال على حبه, in spite of their love for it. ذوي القربى, for their relatives who are suffering. واليتامى, and the orphans who are suffering. والمساكين, and the poor people. والسائلين, those whose circumstances force them to ask and seek assistance. وابن السبيل, the wayfarer. وفي الرقاب, and for the liberation of slaves. That's all in the social realm, right? That's social action. That's in the social realm. I'm tempted to say social justice, but I don't want to say that because that's a loaded term. So but that's social action. Family, the orphans, the poor people. So faith is now joined with activism. وَأَقَامَ الصَّلَاةِ, spiritual care. But make sure you pray. And salah in many instances is an allegory for the entire religious life. So in rhetoric they say ذِكْرُ الْبَعْدِ وَإِرَادَةُ الْكُلِّ. فَتَحْرِيرُ الرَّقَبَةِ, liberating literally the neck. Would you liberate the slave? So part is mentioned, but the whole thing, whole entity is intended. So in some instances, salah is part of our system of religion, is mentioned, but the whole system is intended. And it's the opposite. ذِكْرُ الْكُلِّ وَإِرَادَةُ الْبَعْضِ. In mentioning the whole unit, but intending part. التقوى هاهنا ويشير إلى صدره 3 مرات. The taqwa is here, and he pointed to his chest 3 times, the meaning of the heart that's in the chest. محل التقوى القلب. But so ذكر الكل الصدر وإرادة البعض القلب. So in any case, spiritual care, making sure you pray, you're engaging in dhikr, and you're fasting Mondays or Thursdays or both, and voluntarily. Ashura that recently passed, Tasu'ah, the 9th and 10th of Muharram. So you're engaging in a regular reading Quran, very important, in a regimen of spiritual practice. There's no activist burnout in that case. You just give more fuel for your activist fire. They're like, how do you do it? Allahu Akbar. And so it's a system. And so this verse really highlights the faith, action, spiritual care, taking care of oneself. This is very, very important. So the verse progresses through that. Allahumma Rasulillah. Now, if we focus strictly on worldly concerns, and we leave off our deen, as Imam Dawood mentioned in his introductory remarks, it's very easy to fall into despair. Nothing's never going to change. I've been working at this for 20 years, and nothing's changed. So 20 years, how long was Nuh alayhi salam working at it? Not longer than 20 years. And it goes back to what we mentioned. The change only comes from Allah. If you've been working at it for 2 years and something changed, that's because Allah wanted something to change. If you've been working at it for 40 years and nothing changed, it's because Allah didn't want anything to change. ليس لك من الأمر شيء أو يتوب عليهم أو يعذبهم فإنهم ظالمون. You have nothing to do with the outcome of the affair. This is a lot Azza wa Jal talking to his Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Laysa laka, he didn't say laysa lakum, you believers. Laysa laka. You, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the best of us, you can't affect the outcome. You just do what you're commissioned to do. Do it to the best of your ability. Do it with the best of intentions. Do it in the best of manners. But the outcome's with us, with Allah. ليس لك من الأمر شيء أو يتوب عليهم. If Allah wills, He'll turn to them in repentance, your people, which He did. He turned in repentance to the people of Mecca. أو يعذبهم. أو يعذبهم. Or He could have punished them and wiped them out. It's with Allah, not with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. فَإِنَّهُمْ ظَالِمُونَ. They are oppressors no matter what the case is. So we have oppressors, we have unjust people, and we work to try to mitigate their harm and eradicate it if possible. But if we don't despair. We remind ourselves, لَيْسَ لَكَ مِنَ الْأَمْرِ شَيْءٍ. You have nothing to do with the outcome of the affair. So we go home and drink some tea and play with the baby. The one who despairs goes and jumps off a bridge. To jump off the Detroit-Windsor Bridge. Is that what they call it?
Yeah.
The Ambassador Bridge?
Yeah.
They jump off the Ambassador Bridge. I say Ya Latif because the ambassador is Safir. So they take a little trip to a very hot place. If that was said to the best of creation, if the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Habibullah, the beloved of Allah, couldn't affect the outcome, what can we do? La ilaha illallah. So this is not a quality of believers. See people getting desperate. What and so what? You start and you make da'wah and people aren't responding. This is in a Muslim country. And so you start trying to force them. And you get desperate and you just say they're all kafirs and start killing them. And they get really desperate. That doesn't even work. So what do? You blow yourself up. And combine two of the gravest kaba'ir in one act, murder and suicide. And what has it changed? Now that shouldn't be a controversial statement. Because that's sin. That's not something lawful. That's sin. Murder and suicide. Well, what has it changed? But the despair leads to those depths of depravity. What did Yaqub alayhi salam say to his sons when he sent them back into Egypt to look for Yusuf alayhi salam and Binyamin? يا بني يذهبوا فتحسسوا ليوسف وأخيه ولا تيأسوا من روح الله إنه لا ييأس من روح الله إلا القوم الكافرون. O my sons, go into Egypt and seek out Yusuf and his brother and do not despair of Allah's mercy. Verily only a disbelieving people despair of Allah's mercy. So a believer goes and works and seeks out and tries to change things, but we never despair. We never despair. A lot of people are deeply influenced by the thinking of Professor Derek Bell. Derek Bell says in his writings, a law professor at Harvard, very instrumental, and in fact, he's considered the father of critical race theory. He said white people are inherently racist, they ain't gonna change. That's what he says. He's despaired of them changing. A Muslim doesn't say that. A Muslim says, Allah ala kulli shay'in qadir. Innama amruhu. Ida arada shay'an an yaqulu أن يقول له كن فيكون. That when Allah decrees something, He says, be and it is. All you white folks, who not all white folks, all of you white folks who are racist, a lot of white folks aren't racist, don't be racist no more. Cool. Bam. I've been looking for someone to hug. I love you, brother. What happened to you, Jamal? Oh, man, I just saw last night. Something just hit me. Kun fayakun. Be and it is. That's Quran. That's not me. That's the Quran. So we know if we don't attain what we're working for, Allah didn't decree it. And we know if we're feeling ourselves overwhelmed, we can step back and we'll come back. It'll be there. I guarantee you. If you're broken down and beat down and frustrated, take a break. Take 6 months. Go hiking in the Rocky Mountains. Go with somebody. Don't go alone. Go hiking in the Rocky Mountains. Go to Morocco, beautiful country. Go to Chef Sharon, to a bed and breakfast joint in Chef Sharon in the Atlas Mountains. That's not the Atlas Mountains. That's a little north. Anyway, go to Morocco, beautiful place. Take a break. Go home and just make dhikr for 6 months and read the Quran. Do 12 khatams, 2 a month. Quran, cover to cover. Make some dhikr. Go play with your babies. You're not married, don't have no babies. Go play with your friends' babies. Go have a wrestling match with your little sister. She beats you up. Go to the gym, work out. And then go back to it. It's gonna be there. Someone once said one of the most profound things to me. It's very simple, but it's profound. You know what that is? The cemetery is filled with indispensable people. Empty. The cemetery is filled with indispensable people. Like, they need me. No, I gotta be there. So if you died right now, they're still gonna have the rally. And we canceled the rally because Sister Aisha couldn't come. She just died. Believe me, they're gonna have the rally. And they're going to have janazah for Aisha, and things are going to keep on moving. So don't feel you got to stay there and just get frustrated and almost explode. Take a vacation. Learn how to ski. Go hiking in the Upper Peninsula. So if you see a wolverine, not the Wolverines that can't play football anymore. Not those. A real Wolverine. If you're up in the Upper Peninsula and you're hiking and you see a real Wolverine, don't mess with it. So go hiking in the Upper Peninsula. Just don't bother the Wolverines. That's all. And you'll be all right. But then come back to it. Spiritual care. You know, it's going to be there, believe me. It might even be worse. So you have even more to launch into. And it might be solved. And you can say, Alhamdulillah. I wasn't so indispensable after all. They solved it without me. So just remind, that's the third thing, that we have nothing to do with the outcome. We work hard. The Muslim works hard. He or she works hard. We work with excellence. There's one thing working hard and there's another thing working smart. We try to work hard and smart. إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَتَبَ الْإِحْسَانَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. Allah has adorned, enjoined or ordained excellence in everything. So we try to, what does it take? What do we need? How do we best organize? What are best practices? How do we best spread the message? Can we learn something from the climate kids? How many of you going to a demonstration on Saturday, something support the climate kids? Come on, folks. Where y'all at? We're the activists. But can we learn how they organize? You know, sign up one click and take you through the whole thing, sign you up, tell you where the actions are, where they're in your area, how you can volunteer. Just click, 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 click. Can we learn something in terms of how we organize as Muslims? We can learn something, most definitely. What are best practices? We don't have to be in the Stone Age. So, in the Lord كتب الإحسان على كل شيء. So, we involved in various things as an extension of our faith. We should do it in the best of ways. But we understand the victory, the outcome we desire will only come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if Allah so wills. And so this is, scholars have to be activists in that sense. Like we mentioned, a scholar who doesn't, I did a rhyme on it. The scholar with knowledge whose acts are idle will be punished before worshippers of idols. So the scholar has to act. The scholar is an exemplar. They used to say in Syria, Zellatul alim, Zellatul alam. The scholar messes up, the whole world messes up. The slip of the scholar affects the whole world. Zellatul alim, Zellatul alam. So the scholar has to be an exemplary, an example. Our prophet was an example, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, on how to be. He praised and promised Jannah to those who are active. And so the qa'ideen have a reward. This is the beauty of our religion. If you're an activist, don't condemn people who just sit home and pray and read the Quran and do tahajjud all night. Maybe you'll have success because of them. We have to have wisdom. We have to tell some people, don't be an activist. Especially on Palestine. Why? Because you have a lot of promise, you're charismatic, you're smart, you could be president one day. But if you got in your bio, right, Zahra Bilo, may Allah protect her, she just got kicked off the Women's March board, right, for an anti-Semitic statement. So we have to be smart. We have to say, you are not going to be an activist. You can chomp at the bit, and everyone else respect that. Because we have to have a healthy division of labor. They're sellout, man. They never show up. They're scared. They're punks. No, they're smart. Because one day they could do more in elected office than they can do right now. There has to be a division of labor. We have to respect that. So we're keeping them squeaky clean. So when that charisma and that intellect and that ability to connect with people starts to move people and they start rising through the ranks, no one's going to have any dirt on them because we protected them and we shielded them. You guys, you understand what I'm saying? Young guy, you feeling me? Inshallah. We have to be smart. And we have to look at various talents, skills, and abilities. And then we have to have a division of labor as we go about addressing this thing. The scholar has to always be in touch with the poor and the downtrodden. This is very important. Like if we can't go down and Hakuna Matata with the poor, then we're far. That's not the prophet's role. There definitely, some people are there 24/7 on the front lines. Everyone has to be in touch. Why? Because when you lose touch with the poor and the downtrodden, then the concern as to why we're doing what we do, we're doing it for them, amongst others. We lose touch with that. And when we lose touch with that, we lose touch with a very important part of the prophetic mission. And then we lose divine help. هل تنصرون وترزقون إلا بدعائكم? Are you given divine help and your sustenance? تنصرون تُرْزَقُونَ إِلَّا بِدُعَفَائِكُمْ, for anything other than your treatment of your poor and your weak. وَاللَّهُ فِي عَوْنِ الْعَبْدِ مَا كَانَ الْعَبْدُ فِي عَوْنِ أَخِيهِ. Allah will continue to help the servant as long as the servant is helping his brother and sister. And so this just being and doing and assisting in ways great or small, depending on one's circumstances. Some people will be small. To mention the person that was preserved for public office, so their direct contact with the poor people and their day-to-day grind. It might be small, but it has to be there. And you see wise politicians, they're always taking time to visit the poorest of their constituents. They make time for that. And as we said, some people it's 24/7. They're on this front line, and they're down in the trenches, and they're grinding day by day. But we're all on the same team. That's the fourth point. That we shouldn't look at everyone's not doing this. We shouldn't expect everyone to do the same thing. But we should see ourselves as all being on the same team. We're trying to advance and preserve the religion of Allah Ta'ala in the earth. And we're all trying to gain paradise. And so a part of our counsel is assisting each other in gaining paradise. That's our primary objective. And so that's our most important realm of activism. What are we doing? Active, to do. What are we doing for our soul? So I'm going to move towards the wrap up here, and with 2 points. One point is, so I said I don't want to say social justice before, because when we talk about sacred activism, and Imam Dawood is timely that next week's class is on justice. But I just want to make a brief point, and that is social justice. Justice in our relations in the social realm, for someone who's not Muslim, that's everything. It's a zero-sum game. And that could be very bitter. It can be debilitating. It can be a source of incredible frustration, because that's everything. But for a Muslim, that's only one part of justice. And the other two parts, to illustrate the hadith of Mu'adh ibn Jabal and Abi Dharr. قال, two of them said, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم اتق الله حيثما كنت وأتبع السيئة الحسنة تمحها وخالق الناس بخلق حسن. So it's three things here. اتق الله حيثما كنت. Be mindful of Allah wherever you are. And that's the foundation of our being just in our dealing with Allah. So a person is unjust, then they're engaging in oppression. Right? You say they're an oppressor. Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, إِنَّ الشِّرْكَ لَظُلْمٌ عَظِيمٌ. The greatest oppression is idolatry. In other words, the greatest oppression occurs in your relationship, our relationship with Allah, potentially. So we have to make sure we're not unjust in our dealings with Allah. And any misdeed you do, follow it up with a good deed, being weightier, will wipe it out. That's justice in our dealing with ourselves. If we burden our soul with sin, and we don't repent from those sins, and we meet Allah, Yawm al-Qiyamah, with a mountain of sin, we've oppressed our very soul. وَمِنْهُمْ ظَالِمٌ لِنَفْسِهِ. Amongst them there are those who oppress their soul. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَتُبْ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ. And those who don't repent, they are oppressors. Who are they oppressing? Their neighbors, the rich, the poor. They're oppressing their very soul. That's the second realm of justice. And then the third realm is the social realm. وَخَالِقِ النَّاسِ بِخُلُقٍ حَسَنٍ. Deal with people on the basis of good character. Be good in your relations with people. So if you don't believe in Allah, then that's all you have. You don't have the first round. And you don't have the second round. You only have the third round. One of the tragedies of Muslims in our days is that Muslims are adopting this secular, atheistic view of justice. And in discarding justice in our relations with Allah, are championing things that are forbidden by Allah. But that whole realm's eliminated. And so we have to be aware of the entire realm. Have you ever heard of a justice warrior? No, you haven't. You've only heard of a social justice warrior. If you heard of a justice warrior, raise your hand. We should all be striving to be justice warriors. The whole picture. That's what our religion demands of us. Those who are atheists demand that we be social justice warriors. In conclusion, and I conclude the introduction with the issue of language. Doing this, the above, involves mining the treasure troves of our tradition in order to begin transmitting ideas rooted in a more spiritual worldview. That spiritual worldview must be rooted in the language of the Quran, for it is impossible to convey a spiritual Quranic message in a language whose roots are deeply planted in the materialistic soil of modernity or postmodernity. Furthermore, after adopting a materialistic worldview, it becomes impossible to hold on to an Islamic one. As Zutsu reminds us of this in his index of the ethical terms of the Quran, when discussing the linguistic foundations of the Islamic worldview. He writes, the whole matter is based on the fundamental idea that each linguistic system, Arabic is one, and Quranic Arabic is another, represents a group of coordinated concepts which together reflect a particular Weltanschauung, or worldview, commonly shared by and peculiar to the speakers of the language in question. Thus, Quranic Arabic corresponds in its connotative aspect to what we may rightly call the Quranic worldview, which itself is simply a segment of the wider worldview mirrored by the classical Arabic language. Language is critical. And this is the final point we'll say in terms of bringing spirituality to our activism. We have to begin to use the language of the Quran. So when we talk about, for example, white privilege, as many Muslims do nowadays, what does that do to, how does that make a white Muslim feel? I just saw a clip, a brother converted. First of all, that the term itself comes from an epistemic that has no connection with the divine. And secondly, it has no connection with Islam. And so we'll be riding roughshod over white Muslims. You should renounce your privilege. This brother, he grew up in a coal mining family. His father died at 55 from black lung. His sisters, two sisters, are strung out on opioids. His mother's on heroin because when her husband died, she couldn't get the OxyContin prescription anymore that she was hitting on his. They're all on welfare. And then you're going to tell him they got white privilege? And then they're figuring out where is it? And then if it is there, how can I renounce it? Well, what does that have to do with Islam? Islam came to smash racism, not to accommodate it through the back door. So language, that's just a small example. Language is very, very important. We gave the example of social justice and the implications of that. And so yes, justice is inna Allah ya'muru bil 'adli wal ihsan. I'dilu wa aqrabu lit taqwa. Kunu qawamin bil qist. So words that convey the sense of commutative or distributive justice, they're there. But they are presented in the context of an epistemology and a language that allows us to avoid the pitfalls of alien terminology emanating from atheistic systems of thought. So this is very important. And so, but we have to work towards that. I'm not saying, oh, this is going to happen overnight, but we have to work towards it. And we have to be amenable to being re-educated, because a lot of us have been miseducated. We haven't been educated in an Islamic worldview. I think J.A. Rogers, right, the miseducation of the Negro. Carter G. Woodson. The miseducation of the Negro, right? He said, if there's a miseducation, there has to be a re-education. And many Muslims have been miseducated. And on the basis of that miseducation, engage the world. We have to cultivate humility, myself included. I don't have all the answers. And we have to be open to nasiha, ad-din and nasiha, giving and receiving advice, sincere advice. And hopefully that'll elevate us to a higher place that's pleasing to our Lord, that allows us to attain the objectives that we seek, or at least work towards them, in a way that doesn't destroy relations, that doesn't lead to takfir. Because right now there's a lot of forces that have nothing to do with Islam that are fragmenting our community. I just mentioned one. We have to avoid it because we want the tawheed. We don't want the takfir. So everyone just gives up and I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to do my thing. No, we're going to do our thing. We have our points of emphasis. If we're here at Masjid Wadi Muhammad, Masjid Wadi Muhammad, I think what we're doing differs from what someone at the Unity Center, and not the Unity Center here, the one in the suburban, what city is Unity? In West Bloomfield. We're not going to be doing the same things. We're not going to have the same programs. So we're going to have 5 prayers, inshallah. We're going to be studying the Quran. We're going to be reading Riyadh al-Salihin after Fajr. There's some common things. But in terms of programs, there are going to be different points of emphasis because we're dealing with different realities. But we're going to be united in a way that allows us to beneficially and in healthy ways reinforce the work that each we are doing in our respective realms. Because we're not engaging in language, we're not propagating ideas that split us apart. We're engaging in language and we're propagating ideas that unify us and bring us together. So I'm sure my time, if it hasn't expired, is close to expiring. So I'm going to bow out gracefully and turn the microphone back over to our dear Imam Walid. تفضل داود وليد. تفضل داود وليد, for example. تفضل مشكورا غير مأمور.
May Allah reward you. Ameen. Sallu ala Nabi. So with that, we'll avail ourselves, and more so Imam Zaid. If there's any questions or comments that you'd like to make before we have Sadr Isha, they are welcome. But I will say again that a number of the things that Imam Zaid touched on will be going into more in depth as the classes continue. And in particular, a discussion about nomenclature. We're going to be re-going over that basically every class about the issue of nomenclature or language and how we need to try to stop being boxed in the framework of other people's language. That people who create certain phrases are the owners of those, and within those there are worldviews that trap us in certain thinking. So we're going to go, and there's going to be a little evaluation and giving some alternatives in the process of this class. So with that, any questions? Yes.
Like an alternative to white privilege is jahiliyyah. But the Prophet ﷺ had a perfect opportunity to tell one of his companions he was exercising some privilege. When Abu Dhar, who we mentioned, narrated the hadith, "Taqillah haythuma kunt," he called Bilal the son of a black woman, Ibn Saudat. So the Prophet didn't say, Yani, Abu Dhar, Yani, you're speaking from a position of privilege or inherited power. He said, Anta rajulun fika al-jahiliyyah. He said, you're a man who has pre-Islamic ignorance in you. So there's a linguistic alternative, jahiliyyah. And so then what does that behoove us? To study this word jahiliyyah and how it was used by the Prophet ﷺ in describing certain social phenomena. And then we build our lexicon out like that. And then we introduce an intellectual framework for other people to get beyond the stuff that's tripping them up. Because a lot of them don't like it, but they feel there's no alternative. So if you want to be in with the in crowd, you have to use this language even though they don't like it. They say, wait, the Muslims got this term jahiliyyah, and it means A, B, C, and D. That perfectly meets our needs, our analytical needs. So we have to begin to get work, get busy. And it's not an easy thing. Right now, the Republicans control the discourse. They introduced the welfare queens and all this terminology that was part of the Southern strategy, racism without racist terms. They spent billions of dollars funding think tanks to develop that language. The tax and spend Democrats. That's not a random statement someone came up with. That's a very scientifically crafted phrase to evoke certain ideas in the minds of the average person. That was a part of money. They spent $4 to $5 billion funding think tanks to come up with language that would guide political discourse in this country. And so we have an opportunity to make our contribution, and we don't need to spend all that money because Allah Ta'ala already did it for free.
And just to add on before you put it, Leo, especially people from this community should understand the possibilities of this with erasing some of the shirk or updating it. Is this community right here that helped introduce a new language to the African American community. Mr. Muhammad, Farad Muhammad, the Nation of Islam, brought forth terminology in a whole new language that ended up getting picked up into Black America and actually became standard language within hip-hop music and hip-hop culture. If I say word is born, if I say the lost found, that originated, those type of phrases, that language originated from this building, right? Or from this community, right? So we already have a precedence for that, you know, we can be imaginative, we can refer back to the Quran, refer back to the Sunnah, and we can introduce our own nomenclature with our own worldview, instead of being stuck into the epistemology of people who are on the bottom. And that's just real. But we have to believe it. We have to believe it. So some of it may be a lack of confidence in what we have and having more confidence in other people's theories. Brother Cleo.
Assalamu alaikum, Imam. I couldn't agree more with the statement about you know, developing our own terminologies. The question I had is in reference to something you mentioned early on, Imam Zayd. You talked about basically the tsunami of social ills that are confronting our community, and basically we as Muslims are the only ones who can offer a viable solution on these topics. And when we don't step up and offer our logic and our understanding, you know, it leaves a vacuum for people to kind of come in and for the problem to worsen and for those ideas to become entrenched in our society, which then makes it more difficult for us once we do put our hands to it, to uprooting these social ills. So the fact that we have so many of them confronting us, I wondered what you could offer us in terms of prioritizing which ones we decide to invest ourselves in, and should we, you know, try to cover as many of them as are relevant in modern society? Should we avoid some altogether? What are your thoughts on prioritizing which social ills to
I
address?
think the first thing, it goes back to the verse. ليس البر أن تولوا وجوهكم قبل المشرق والمغرب ولكن البر من آمن بالله. First priority is strengthening our faith, so we can at least stand against the tide before, like in the plane. Put your mask on, your oxygen mask on first before you assist anyone else. We have to save ourselves first. And saving ourselves involves strengthening our faith. Because if our faith is strong, this stuff won't faze us. Like we've been, mashallah, it's bad out there, but sure enough, it's good in here. So we have to strengthen our faith. Once our faith is strong, or as we strengthen our faith, we don't have the luxury of A and then B. It's like A while we're dealing with B. And look the wisdom of Allah. Like a lot of people, when they hear the verse, فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا, they think after hardship, ease comes. But the verse doesn't say فَإِنَّ بَعْدَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. It says مَعَ الْعُسْرِ, verily, while there is difficulty, there is ease. And so a lot of times that involves looking at things from a different perspective. We mentioned, instead of looking at it from a worldly perspective defined by someone else's terminology, someone else's theories of knowledge, we look at it from an otherworldly perspective, defined by our knowledge. Specific issues, so once we can, I think the most pressing, critical issue is the whole LGBTQ thing. Plus. Because, number one, and I saw the clip of the brother, Caucasian commenter, I don't even know his name, someone sent it. But he's talking about this panel that this Muslim imam, I think it was Latino, it was Rios, had, and how he's very compassionate and understanding when talking about LGBTQ and how Muslims should interact. Very compassionate, very understanding. But when he started talking about white privilege, he was brutal, even against Muslims. And so I think that's indicative of the way something that, number one, is clear, unambiguous sin is being accepted by Muslims. I said, I told one brother, I had this discussion, I said, why is this the only sin that we're trying to make acceptable? No one's rallying for drinking alcohol. No one's rallying for eating pork. No one's rallying even for heterosexual fornication, which would logically be something more amenable to rallying for. But here people are rallying and seeking. Why? Because there's a concerted effort. We used to argue. Sheikh Abdul Karim, he's faqih, he's legally trained in fiqh. And he could tell you, and some of you know it's true. We used to have legal debates, can a woman shave facial hair? Right? Can you pluck a unibrow? So can Anthony Davis, like, you know, these are the big issues. Now people, Fatima becomes Marcus, and it's cool. He done changed everything. We used to argue, can you shave? A woman got a few beard hairs. Can she pluck them or change? Now the whole thing is changed, and it's cool. It's all right. And so when we're being worn down like that, it's changing the very foundations of the religion. It's going to the very foundation of the religion. And that's a very slippery slope. Now, in saying that, I'm not saying someone has suffering from gender dysmorphia or really has some serious identity problems. We should be compassionate and amenable to discussing it, referring them for therapy, if you can still do that in Michigan. California is illegal. It's illegal. When they had prayer in school, they said we have to take prayer out of school because the government, public schools, the government should not legislate morality. But in this realm, the government can legislate morality. So there's some, and to the extent of going into pre-K and telling these kids in pre-K, sexualizing our kids in pre-K, that you have to be accepting of transgender relations and homosexual relations in pre-K. A friend of mine in California, 11-year-old son, was in class. Some transgender guy comes into the class, dressed like a woman, and explaining to these 11-year-olds what transgender is, and then ask them, now, how many of you will marry a transgender woman? Nobody raised their hand, then told the kids they're being bigoted. Now, what's going on? So anyway, I'm getting myself in trouble. He's live streaming. Then Flip Wilson. How many remember Flip Wilson? Say, the devil made me do it. I'm a flip script. The angel made me do it.
So we go to, the sister has a question. If not, we'll go to Brother Jermaine. There's a sister with a question? No? Okay. Get him back to Brother Jermaine.
I'm sorry.
Why they can say
now, as far as dealing with the white supremacy rhetoric, let's say that, right? And how you address that as far as speaking on how we can change that language. The thing is, I'm asking, if this is something that people around here see consistently, as far as what we're dealing with. We're dealing with assassinations from that rhetoric, you know what I'm saying? From that lead to that rhetoric, we're saying people getting murdered consistently because of that rhetoric.
right?
You thinking, I understand what you're saying, and I'm not saying.
Just listen, man.
Let me finish it.
Just be straight up.
Let me finish it. I'm saying to that, but you think it's gonna be magically turned around like because of one or two white Muslims around that this hatred is not going, and that hatred or that type of pain is not gonna be react to it. Like you think about it, you're gonna react to it.
Right.
And so you,
Absolutely.
who thinks like, okay, every white? No, you don't. We don't think like that. We do definitely think that when we go outside, we're not just working against. You know what I'm saying? Bob and Jim. We're working with Bob, Jim, millions of Bob and Jims. You know what I'm saying? Right. So it's going to be a natural reaction to that type of thing, that fight. So
absolutely.
My thing is how can we find that type of balance, and how can we not make those who feel that way feel that way against white people as a whole? I'm gonna keep it real.
Keep it real.
How you gonna?
You're supposed to keep it real.
Exactly.
Don't sugarcoat it.
Talking to
How
Mike
you gonna
so
make?
people can hear
How
on screen.
how can you try to like make somebody who feel that way towards white people as a whole,
Right.
like they don't have that type of you know what I'm saying? They don't have the
A legitimate
reasoning to feel that way.
legitimate reason
Yeah,
to
they
feel
don't have
that
the
way.
reason. And the same thing on the flip side with the LGBTQ, like where can we find that's haram, but that rhetoric, how that rhetoric that made us feel that way is not haram, man. They have people around encourage, or not encourage it, but you know what I'm saying? Cool, like you can't be playing both sides.
Yeah. The latter question is dealt with in the book. So I'll leave that to Imam Bani. The former question, how do we deal with it? By seeing it for what it is. Evil emanating from dehumanized people. And dehumanization is an equal opportunity employer. Because for every one person in the hood that's killed by a white person, right? How many is killed by black folks?
I knew that was about to happen.
Yeah, no, but what I'm saying, wait. I'm not saying, I'm saying both. What's the common denominator? I'm not saying that's not a legitimate concern. What's the common denominator? These white folks have been dehumanized, right or wrong?
I'm from the first. I'll be
Somebody, anybody. They haven't been?
I don't think I'm
So-
wrong.
Except for
They have an entitlement to feel that way.
another race of people, yes.
But is it human for someone to want to crush someone, keep them down, deny them the God-given rights, just to maintain control based on the color of their skin? Is that human?
When you say dehuman,
Huh?
it's like
That's not
And so I'm saying, someone who has that mentality and they will go so far as to kill folks, they've been dehumanized.
But it's just not the killing, it's the whole system as
That's
a whole, right?
what I think I described the system, right? Who gonna deny you your rights? Who gonna put structures and institutions in place, right? They've been dehumanized. And our people who will kill us have been dehumanized. The common denominator is dehumanization. So how do you address it? We come with a program that tries to humanize folks. And that's what did Malcolm notice? What did Malcolm say? Why did Malcolm write his famous letter from Mecca? I've been with white folks with the bluest of eyes and the blondest of hair and the so-called fairest of skin, but they don't think like white folks in America because Islam has taken, or in my context, to paraphrase, Islam has humanized them, so maybe if the white man in America could do what?
study.
Accept and study Islam, maybe they could get in touch with their humanity. So we have to be the message to bring Islam to them. So we could get mad legitimately. See, I'm not trying
That's
to.
what I'm saying. Legitimate.
I'm not trying to
That's what I'm saying.
delegitimize the anger that you feel. But what I'm saying, we could take that course. Or we could say, you know what? I'm going to try to be a reflection of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I'm going to bring some Islam to these people and try to put some humanity in their hearts. This is why Imam W.D. Muhammad, right? He had a choice. Farrakhan chose to say, after a couple years of being Abdul Halim Farrakhan, that no, I'm going to go back to the all white men, they're all devils. Imam W.D. Muhammad had the courage to say, no, if they could be Muslim, they could be human. And as human beings, they could come through the masjid like everybody else. That's what the Imam did. It's courageous. It's easy to just say, you know what, they're devils, and keep that old thinking on both sides in place. But we have to challenge ourselves in the way that Malcolm was able to challenge himself, in the way that Imam W.D. Muhammad was able to challenge himself. And maybe, there's no guarantee, maybe Derek Bell's right. But I can't, as a Muslim, I can't accept that all white people are evil. When I and I'm sure everyone, if you're honest, you can see and benefit the benefits of goodness that a whole lot of white folks are doing out there in the world. Now, are there some evil? Yes, they're evil. So evil we could legitimately call them devils. Yes. Allah calls them devils. Shayateen, jinns, ins wal jinn. Human devils. Yes, there are a bunch of them. Are they all that way? No. And so our challenge is to go out there and to reach these devils, or to try to reach them, and to encourage those who aren't devils to get in touch with their humanity and join us in our efforts to reach the rest. So that's how we do it. Is it going to happen overnight? I mentioned earlier, I said, this stuff isn't, when I was talking about language and how we change, it's not going to happen overnight.
That's all I was saying.
It took the Republican Party from Barry Goldwater to Trump to institute some of the things they're pushing through now. But they had a long game. As Muslims, we tend to lack a long game, right? Tiger Woods was dominant. Why? Because he had a long game and a short game and a mid-range game. He had the whole package. That's why he was dominant. We got a short game as Muslims. We don't have a long game. Like, how can we put a plan in place to gradually, over time, so Republicans, they had a long game. It was a Barry Goldwater lost, but eventually we're going to get to this point. Part of their long game was what? The Supreme Court. Democrat, I ain't voting. Hillary, man, Hillary's crooked. Trump's right on that. She is crooked, Hillary. I'm staying home. Republican, like, I hate Trump. But you know what? If Trump wins, I'm going to get 3 Supreme Court justices in the first term.
Right.
And once Ruth Bader Ginsburg croaks, she's on life support, they're going to have their 3 Supreme Court court. No long game. They're looking at the long game. Forget Trump. Trump, at the worst, Trump's going to be gone in 2024. But those justices are going to be on the Supreme Court for the next 40 years. Those 180 federal judges are going to be on the federal bench for the next who knows how many decades. So the Federalist Society, all these moves and things they put in place to make those changes happen. So what can we put in place to begin to work towards eradicating the devilish behavior that legitimately makes people mad? I ain't saying don't get mad. I'm not saying it's going to change overnight, but we have to begin to think, and this is what Islam makes us do. There's a principle in our religion. It's called an-nadharu ila ma'alat, looking at the long-term consequences of things. They said don't curse your own father. Who will curse their own father, O Messenger of Allah? One who curses someone else's father, and then they turn around and curse their father. They're the reason their father got cursed. And so look at the long-term outcome. Just like you curse their father, no, you curse your own father. Because what you did led to a consequence down the road that you could have avoided. And so what can we begin to look at and do to avoid some of the outcomes that we currently are witnessing? And it's going to take time. And while stuff is happening, people are legitimately upset. I'm saying, don't worry, be happy. I'm kind of saying that because if you're close with Allah, they say, kun ma'Allah wa la tubali. Be with Allah, don't worry about this stuff. That doesn't mean don't work to change it, but listen, be with Allah. That's the true liberation. Like they say, like the French Revolution, they brought in this idea of hurriya, freedom. Like the Sufis 1,000 years ago introduced hurriya. They say a truly free person is one whose relationship with Allah is so strong they're liberated from the dunya having any influence on how they feel, how they act. That's a free person. The world can't do nothing to me to affect my attitude, take my smile away. The Prophet was always smiling in the midst of the wars, in the midst of organizing the community, in the midst of sending his companions twice for migration to Ethiopia and then the big migration to Medina. In the midst of all that, what's his characteristic? He's the smiling Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When he was stoned at Tyre, ridiculed, spat on, beat with sandals, rocks thrown at him by the fools and children and imbeciles. What did he say? Ya Allah, if this is not an expression of your anger, then I could care less. That was bad. I could care less. That's freedom. And so when I say it starts with us, our faith, strengthen our relationship with Allah, so we're free. And that was Malcolm. What did Malcolm say? Islam has solved my personal problem. I'm free. But as long as my people's problems aren't free, I will remain Malcolm X. But personally, he was free. Malcolm was free. That's why he was ready. He was free. I could die. They could kill me. There people put a plan in place. You could read Jan Carew, Ghost in Our Blood. One of the most best books on Malcolm that talks a lot about his mother. That just often neglect the aspects of Malcolm's story. They had a plan. They were going to bring Malcolm to Africa, let him lay low, chill for a few years, let all that tension pass, come back to America. Malcolm said, no, I'll stay here and get killed. I'm free. I'm free. And so Malcolm was free. He said, my Islam has solved my personal problem. And these people ain't stressing me out no more. They ain't getting under my skin. They ain't upsetting me because I'm connected with Allah. But my people got some issues that I need to address. And that's what I'm dedicating my life to. That makes sense?
We'll take one more question.
I
and we have
before
to
the
close
sister
up.
had a comment or
I just
question.
want to
Excellent.
you were talking about within the government. So my thought here is that more Muslims need to get into politics to help make a change.
Don't say that too loud. Blogging about you. Now we need to be at every level. Like I said, and we have to start grooming people for that. And when we see someone talented, we need to begin, no, this person will be a great politician. So we need to protect them, we need to educate them, make sure they get the best education. We'll pay for them to go to Harvard. Because we have this fund. We have our political empowerment fund. We're going to send them to Harvard Law School. We're going to pay for it. And these folks, man, this brother got fire and passion. This sister can write. We're going to send her to Columbia Journalism School. And when she comes back, she's going to run our online blog. And so we have to start identifying talents and skills and then making sure that that can be cultivated as part of a wider plan. So like I said, we have to start cultivating a long game. We got the short game. We got to get out, organized. We got that, but we need a long game. Because if you don't have a long game to go with the short game, you're never going to get to the putting green. You're going to double bogey every hole. Because instead of whacking the drive like 270 yards, you're going to hit it 100. So it's going to take you 3 to reach the green on a par 3. You're behind before you get started because there's no long game. Once you get to the green, you got it. 30 feet, back. 40 feet, back. But it took you so many shots to get there, you already double bogey. You're 2 over the limit. So we need both. We need the long game and the short game. Once we need that, we need all of us. We need the creativity and resources. You know, when I was in Oakland, California, we had a coalition between the suburban communities and the lighthouse mosques. We gave out in a couple years over $300,000 in zakat in the inner city. The lighthouse mosque, you go there's a little storefront and open a nation there. Thoroughbred rats, the original lighthouse. Man, them rats were so big, they could use them like in rap movies. Like they redid Bin the Rat. They go to the lighthouse and capture some of them rats, man. Them were thoroughbred rats. One brother was visiting, right? He was moved to Oakland, a Pakistani brother. He was praying there, and his mother came to visit him the last day of Ramadan. And it was like we had iftars and food all over. The rats were bold, and the brother's mother came. I was making dua. Ya Allah, don't let this rat come out now. Brother's mother gonna have a heart attack. But then we got this church. But the church real estate's expensive. Church costs $550,000. We raised two fundraisers. Raised $250,000. We were a bit short. One brother, this wasn't from the hood, wasn't African American. One brother came and gave us a check for $300,000. We just Saturday night we had a fundraiser to trying to get starting a reentry house for brothers coming out of the prison. It's a building right across from the masjid. $100,000, bam, let it go in the fundraiser. Most of that money didn't come from the inner city area. It came from people who recognized that these brothers and sisters here have skills and abilities and opportunities to do something for Islam that we don't have. We have some stuff they don't have. And if we bring it all together, we're going to be a powerful community. And so it's going to take all of us bringing it all together. When we bring it all together, look out. Lord have mercy. It's going to be a hot time in the old town, as they say. Allah bless you.
Ameen.
Bless this community.
Ameen.
Bless Masjid Wadi Muhammad. Bless all of those who made the transition from the first resurrection to the second resurrection. And may Allah bless us all to live to see and be part of the third resurrection.
Ameen.
May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless our elders, bless our young folks, bless our sisters, bless our brothers. May Allah strengthen our brothers. May Allah strengthen our brothers.
Ameen.
May Allah strengthen our brothers.
Ameen.
May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of our men folk to be those men described in the Quran as the protectors and maintainers of women.
Ameen.
And may Allah bless our women to be supportive of their husbands and their brothers while maintaining their dignity and their individual aspirations. But that's part of a communal reality and not part of an integrated, fragmented, anti-communal reality.
Ameen.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the wherewithal to come together, to bring our hearts together for good and upliftment, purification. May Allah bless us to understand anything we may convey to each other in the give and take and the scrum of our discussions to be taken in the best way, to be taken with the spirit of love and brotherhood and sisterhood. May Allah bless us to be open and honest in our discourse and to work towards a common solution that benefits all of us and that is predicated on us being truthful and open with each other. And may we accept that. May Allah bless us to be amenable to receiving criticism and to take the criticism of our critics seriously. And to not be so obsessed with ourselves that we can never see the validity of their insights and their points.
Ameen.
May Allah bless us to stand up for truth. May Allah Ta'ala bless us be enemies of falsehood and the purveyors and propagators of falsehood.
Ameen.
May Allah bless everything that we do to be pleasing unto Him.
Ameen.
And we ask Allah to bless us with His love. Allahumma inna nas'aluka hubbak. And the company and the support of those He loves. وَحُبًّا مَنْ يُحِبَّكَ, of those who love Him. And the love of the actions which deliver us unto His love. وَحُبَّ الْعَمْلِ الَّذِي يُبَلِّغُنَا حُبَّكَ. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الفاتحة.
Jazakumullah khair everyone for attending. Jazakumullah khair Imam Zaid for being here for our initial class. Allah bless your family for making the trip out and return you back to us soon. to Imam Dawood, Jazakallah khair for, this is a huge task to take on this class and to teach it, and we're honored that you we're going to be the first class to take it. And I know Imam Zaid asked about Justice Warrior. I've never heard of Justice Warrior, but if I had to think of a Justice Warrior, it would be our brother Imam Dawood. So we're very happy to have you teaching the course. To Masjid Wali Muhammad, Jazakumullah khair for allowing us to host the class here. Specifically Sister Sabrina, who set up the class for tonight. For our dignitaries, Imam Salim, Sheikh Abu Kareem, Jazakumullah khair. And for all of you, the next class will be October 2nd, Wednesday, October 2nd in Canton. It'll be at the MCWS, formerly ITT building. So the class will be taking place there. And we hope you all will join. This is a discussion in process, and we hope to have everybody there. So Jazakumullah khair, everyone, please drive safely. And for those of you that came late, there is registration for the classes downstairs. So please remember to register before you leave. And we'll have the adhan first.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la